It has been an awfully bad week, a gosh darn horrible week for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. Why? Well, there's questions around his GST holiday, $250 checks. Who's getting them? Why aren't seniors eligible? Apparently, one of his own MPs is being threatened by him if he doesn't vote in favor of it. And of course, who could forget about the Trump tariffs and those terrible polls? Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me is Brian Lilley, who's covered everything from pillar to post of all the things I've just mentioned. All right, Brian, let's talk about the fact that it hasn't been a good week for Justin Trudeau. I know that he's out there in question period. He's making quips at Polyev. He's trying to be clever and witty, but it's been a bad week. Let's start with the big one and the Trump tariffs.
Yeah, well, after the Trump tariffs, he was probably wishing we'd all just go back to talking about him dancing at a Taylor Swift concert while Montreal was burning. It's a much easier issue. Donald Trump, I've said from the beginning, he doesn't want to put tariffs on Canada. He doesn't want to make everything that his country imports from ours 25% more expensive. He wants to use the threat of tariffs as a shock and awe tactic to get a desired outcome. We're already seeing that. He was posting about how the Mexican president has, they had a lovely call, and she has now promised that they're going to work together on the border, reducing migrants and reducing the amount of drugs flowing through. What have we had? Well, a first minister's meeting called not by the prime minister, but by Ontario Premier Doug Ford, who then went public after saying, hey, we want a meeting, went public on the radio, went in front of TV cameras and said, I've asked for a meeting. I've demanded a meeting. All the premiers want a meeting. Finally had one on Wednesday. But we haven't seen action from Trudeau. I mean, they assured us the border was fine just a little while ago. And well, lo and behold, it's not. You've got over the last 3 years, over 1,100 people on the terror watch list being stopped going from Canada into the US, and just 199 from Mexico on the terror watch list. You've got an increase of about 82% in the number of people going across the border illegally and then declaring asylum. And who are they? Mostly Indian, Chinese, Mexican nationals who are given a visa to come visit Canada and then immediately go to the States. So yeah, the Americans are saying, hey, you got a problem here. You got to fix it. Yeah. Is Justin Trudeau up for it? I don't know.
Well, all we heard from Justin Trudeau was reassurances that he, quote, had a good call with President-elect Trump. And then we also heard he spoke with the Mexican president, the newly elected Mexican president. And Trump then tweets out how great that call was. We did get such a tweet, Brian. That's not out there. Nothing on Truth Social, nothing posted to X about how great Canada is doing when it comes to these concerns and issues that the U.S. has. A lot of Canadians crying foul. This is unfair. This is the chaos that we expected from Donald Trump. I would say only this to them. There was nothing about what President-elect Trump has said that he hadn't telegraphed for months and almost for a few years, actually, prior to the election on November 5th. Well, so none of this should be as a surprise.
The only thing that surprised me was that he increased the tariff amount. He talked about 10 to 20% tariffs, but it was more about getting countries to act in the way he wanted for China. I wasn't expecting the threat of a 25% tariff on everything coming out of Canada over the border. We know that he considers the border an issue. His new border czar, Tom Homan, he's from upstate New York, right south of Kingston, so he knows the Canadian border. And if he's saying it's a problem, it's a problem. We've got to deal with the problem, and then we can avoid the tariffs. I mean, it's amazing to watch all of our colleagues at other media outlets just pull their hair out and talk about countervailing tariffs, and we have to retaliate and let's fight. No, they have valid concerns about the border. And by the way, fixing the problems that's behind them, all of these visas that people are using to come to Canada.
That's right.
Fixing that problem is good for this country as well. And then it has the side benefit of it keeps our biggest trading partner happy.
Well, let's go on to the other headaches that Justin Trudeau is facing. So recently he went with a big hullabaloo that he's going to have this GST holiday for 2 months. And then, present Canadians with a whopping increase in the carbon tax just a couple months after that, but nonetheless. And then it was not only just a GST holiday, Brian, it was going to be $250 checks for many millions of Canadians that have up to $150,000 income. that excludes a significant swath of the population, seniors, those with disabilities. And so now there are questions not only from the opposition parties about making sure seniors are covered, but also the call is coming from inside the House. One of his MPs from Hamilton, Chad Collins, is even saying that he is not going to vote in favor of this GST break unless there's changes made to who's getting the $250 checks. Brian, Chad Collins is claiming that there are going to be, quote, consequences to him not voting with the government. So this will likely pass, will it not?
Well, I love that they told Chad Collins there'll be consequences. And then Collins went public and said, I'm from Hamilton. You have to threaten me a lot harder than that if you want to get action. Trudeau has the Bloc saying that this has to be expanded to seniors. He's got the NDP saying, well, more people need to get this $250 check. He's got, as you said, Collins and others within his own caucus. But it's funny that just last week, the big push from the Trudeau Liberals was, oh, the Conservatives won't let their people speak freely and vote freely. They're the leaders' representative in their ridings, not the ridings representative in Ottawa. And now they do this. They say, you're going to vote for us or consequences. What, are they going to kick him out? Are they going to take away a committee position? Who knows? But I think he's in trouble with this $250 check. I'm not sure that it will pass in its current form. I think he's got to do something else to try and get this through. He's going to have to change. He doesn't have the votes. If one of his own party members goes against him and all the opposition parties do, and it's a money bill, well, election, hello.
That is a motion of confidence because there's money attached to it. Yes. Yeah. So there's a bigger picture issue at play here. Look, I think history has sort of shown us the way. The NDP will go along with it because they don't want an election. Singh's pension is not vested just yet. We got to hang on. He's got to hang on till 2025 for that to happen. So I think in spite of perhaps maybe one or two Liberals not being happy with it, I think the NDP will help them sweep this over the top.
I think Trudeau will sweeten the pot a little bit, and then the NDP will jump on board.
Yeah, which is typically of what's been happening. But I think that there is a lot more questions about this GST holiday and this $250 check, where I don't think it's going to have the cost effect that they're anticipating that it will. Because as has been pointed out so many times, it doesn't actually go to the things in terms of the GST break on the things that would make a difference to us today. Home heating costs, for example, unless you live in Atlantic Canada.
The interesting thing about this is it's going to cost provincial governments more. So this whole package is apparently worth about $6 billion. And most of that is the $250 checks. So as I said, they're going to have to sweeten the pot on that. Yeah. I mean, okay, it's going to go up from 4 billion to maybe 5 or 6 just for the checks.
Yeah.
Well, turns out that I was right, as I often am, and said this is going to cost provinces more than it'll cost the federal government in each respective province. This is going to cost the Ontario government $900 million. Now, the agreement is the feds can do this and the province just has to suck it up. Mm-hmm. So there was a nice little announcement the other day with Peter Bethlenfalvy saying, oh, we're going to match it. He didn't have a choice. But because the hit for the province is so big, the feds have to compensate them in some way. So are they going to pay that $900 million as well? Are they going to have to do that in Alberta, in British Columbia, in Manitoba? Well, not in Alberta. There is no provincial sales tax. But will they have to do this in other provinces? It's going to depend on the wording of the harmonized sales tax agreement that they had at the time.
It's almost like they know they're losing the next election, Brian, and they just are going to strip the cupboards bare, making it just that much more difficult for the Conservatives if they are successful. So let's move on to that next election, adding to Justin Trudeau's just darn right horrible week, as he was, as you mentioned earlier, he's dancing at a Taylor Swift concert with his ex-wife and, and his daughters there. It's a nice moment. But meanwhile, the city of Montreal is literally burning from anti-Semitic riots that were going on in the city. Such a juxtaposition in terms of seeing the pictures of Trudeau dancing while all of this mayhem was going on in his hometown. I think it just but shows and spells out that Canadians want to change. Canadians are just craving, and there's so much desire for an election. More recent polls showing even a larger gap between the Conservatives, who are well over 20 points in one poll in the lead, and and showing that the NDP and the Liberals tied for second place. And in one of those polls, Brian, showing that the Liberals are in third place territory.
Yeah, it's very disturbing for the Liberals because there are several areas of the country where they do end up third. British Columbia being one of them, and you know, a lot of folks that don't pay close attention to where Trudeau's coalition has come from, where he's been able to get support. They forget that BC, I always hear this from people out west. Oh, it's all you people in Ontario and Quebec vote for them, and we don't matter. BC has been instrumental in all three victories for Trudeau. And now his party is well back in third place. In the Abacus poll, I think the Liberals are down at 20, the NDP's at 27, and the Conservatives are just way ahead. That is going to hurt him. That's going to hurt him. He's in third place in Abacus, I believe, in Quebec as well. I'm not sure how many extra seats the Conservatives are going to pick up there, but the Bloc is going to start eating the Liberal lunch in Quebec. And we know in Ontario, it will be a complete reversal, probably, roughly 75 to 85 seats for the Conservatives, and the Liberals in Ontario are going to be reduced to, a few seats here in Toronto, maybe some seats in London. Maybe Chad Collins gets to keep his because he's speaking out against this. It's just horrible times. They keep the Liberal, every time the Liberals say, oh, Pierre Poilievre's having a really bad week, it turns out that Poilievre's polling numbers generally go up then, and the Liberals fall. And that's what's happened over the last little while. Trudeau's had a horrible week. They tried claiming Poilievre was having a horrible week. The polling results tell a different story.
Well, maybe Justin Trudeau could improve the week for all Canadians, and let's have an election. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and go to the TorontoSun.com. You'll find commentary and coverage there you will not find anywhere else.